Hey guys, this is Luke with Dad Life Chess. Just jumping in here to the 10-minute pool on chess.com to see if we can get a training game. I did notice when I was looking at the stats earlier today that I have officially crossed over the 150 game mark. Excuse me, for these slow games on chess.com. So I know slow games, 10-minute games are not exactly the slowest games ever, but compared to the Bold and Blitz that I was playing before, they are slow games. So, and that's just in, I think, a month and a half or so of playing. So, gotten quite a few games in over the last few weeks and learned a lot from the wins, probably more from the losses, but that's how it always goes, right? All right, so I actually think I already misplayed this. I think I was supposed to play, if they don't play the d5, I think I'm supposed to play e4 here. Um, so I may have already misplayed this, but we're going to keep going. Nothing massively wrong here yet. So the idea here, I normally play the London, but one line when they play Grunfeld type of setup, King's Indian type of setup, then I often will play Knight C3 earlier, just looking to get the bishop and queen on the diagonal here, and then there's actually some really dangerous lines here for black. So it's not just the usual trade off the bishop, dark squared bishop. That is part of it, but there's actually also other moves here or other lines here that can be really dangerous for black, where you trade the rook for the knight here. Now that he's played this pawn move, it helps a lot with some of the attacks. But yeah, there's definitely some threats here. It's at least an interesting game. The problem for black is that obviously I'm coming attacking here on the king side, and he is very underdeveloped on the queen side. So castling queen side is going to be difficult. And in fact, it looks like here he's not going to be probably at this point. So, all right, let's take a look. So takes, and then I'm on that diagonal for discoveries, so I can see that being an issue. So I think we need to play this. Okay, and we have a game. All right, so is he going to look to castle queenside? Probably not with this bishop on the diagonal here. I'm going to play here. I didn't calculate this probably as much as I should have, but I think takes, and if he takes here, I think I can take here and here. Oh, okay. Well, that's just comes with check, and then we're going to back up the bishop and try to keep that. Okay, so he plays. That's a fast move to make and a smart one. He plays bishop f8. I didn't even notice right away why he was doing it, because the move that I'm considering here, g4, he needs an escape square. So makes sense, but I do want to get that piece out of here. So, ooh, and perhaps also he was noticing that I have this move, and his queen is pinned. So I'm going to be angling in here, and maybe he wanted to be able to take back. Okay, doesn't his knight get trapped here? Check. Sorry. If he doesn't want to lose the queen, he has to take back, and when I take back here, I don't think that knight has anywhere to go. All right. Well, that was a pretty fast game. A little faster than normal, but let's go ahead and take a look at it and see what we can learn. I do want to check my lines on this because I have played this before, the early knight c3 and then castles queenside, but I have also played games where I get the move order wrong. So I want to look at the opening. That's kind of where I'll start, probably, is to look at the opening here and make sure that I didn't miss. Oh, yeah, sorry, backing up here. I'm almost confident I did miss here. I think if they don't play d5 here, I think you're supposed to play. Actually, sorry, it's after my knight move. So I did play correctly. Yeah, I think here if they play bishop g7, I think you're supposed to play at that point e4 and try to pressure that way if they haven't played e5 or d5 yet. So actually, this probably was fine, I think. Yeah, so I'll check the opening here and just see, and like I mentioned, there's some attacks here. Like if black castles here in this position, then h5 is coming, and if he takes with the knight, you can sack with the rook on h5, get the bishop in, and there's just a lot of pressure down this g file. So it can get really messy and really sharp really fast on some of these lines. So my opponent didn't go for that and played something a little more solid here. I did think about this move for a minute, and I wondered if there was something more aggressive that I could do, given the fact that his king is not castled yet and not exactly safe. I just didn't see anything. I wonder if already this is what often happens if you go too soon here, though, with the bishop and queen on battery here, is that black can play here and force. Sorry, that's after he takes. Sorry about that. Trying to get rid of these. So if I try to go here too soon, is black can takes with the queen. And then it gets messy here. Again, I probably would still be even clearly have an attack here as well, because he's not castling at this point. But with the knight here on g4, he is threatening the fork on f2. He's obviously attacking my queen at that point. So I can back it up, I think, here. I can back my queen up to e3 to cover that square where the fork would happen, but I know you have to be careful sometimes going too soon. Normally it's not a good idea to play bishop h6 until after they've castled, I think. So we'll check the analysis there and see if I'm right on that. I pinned here, and then I think this is probably a mistake to remove the defender of that knight, because let me just think through this really quick here. So takes, yeah, if you try to back up and preserve that bishop somewhere, this pawn just keeps munching. In fact, if you if you didn't do anything about it, it would go all the way to the rook in the corner. So I think taking with the pawn here, just trying to see if there's any other moves that he could have played. And obviously if you do nothing, so there, yeah, that's the other option, is that he just defends, right? So he can play maybe this. You don't want to play queen c7 because you don't want to get your queen on the diagonal here. So maybe rook c8 defends, another way to defend. Takes, maybe even takes here to avoid a pin. And then if I take there at that point, obviously he could take back with the rook. So maybe just defending here would have been better, but I think taking was a mistake because of takes with the pawn. D takes e5. I think that, unless I'm just missing something on calculation, I think this here would have been winning. And he tried to attack there, but I think taking with check, maybe before playing that move. Yeah, like I just talked about, if he takes here first, this knight is threatening to take back whenever I get the chance, and I can just start taking pieces here. So I don't think that works out for him. He tried to preserve that piece, but I just took with check and then backed up the bishop. So, I mean, obviously material is even here, but I think the way that the awkwardness of having this pawn here and not being able to take it back. If my bishop's not here and if he can take this pawn back, I mean, I think he's completely fine. Oh, didn't mean to play that. But because he couldn't do that, I think it probably it cramped all of his pieces on the king side and created some problems. So, all right, let's take a look at the analysis then and see what we can learn. Again, a little bit of a shorter game than normal, but I'm sure there will still be things we can learn. So I want to check the opening and see if I missed anything there. And then let's see if I identified correctly where my opponent's mistake was. It seemed to me that B6 was kind of a weakness there that was unnecessary at that point. And then the ability that I had to take with the D pawn, D takes E5, just seemed like it cramped the position. So I would guess at that point that I had some kind of an advantage. We'll see if that is correct. All right, apparently it's not correct, well, at least not on the surface level. It looks like my accuracy in this game was pretty bad. Wow, 44% accuracy for me and then 72% for my opponent. So definitely some things to learn here. I'm not even sure how they get that percentage. It seems odd because I had 0 mistakes, 0 blunders, 1 inaccuracy, and my opponent had 1 mistake, 1 blunder. So it looks like my opponent played a good game and just had 1 move that was 1 or 2 moves that were a problem. That kind of lost his advantage. So let's take a look. All right, these moves are all fine. Again, I mentioned H4, castle's queenside, C5. I see the computer, marks that as a good move, not the excellent. I'm just curious what the best move is here. Knight C6. Okay. Yeah, it's not normally a move you want to make. Normally you want to get the pawn out. C5 is normally a move you want in any kind of opening where you have, the D4 pawn here that you're trying to put pressure on. So I'm not surprised my opponent played that before playing Knight C6, but it looks like playing Knight C6 here would have been slightly better, or even A6 I'm seeing here. A6 just preventing the move that came later in the game where I pinned with the bishop. All right, so everything here is, we have mostly equal game. Okay, this is the move that I kind of pinpointed, and I think, yeah, it looks like I'm wrong. Definitely not. It was not the best move in this position, but it was not a mistake or inaccuracy even. So what happens here with this sequence? All right, so that's the correct move. Knight takes is correct. So is the DXE5. All right, so here's our mistake. Knight H5. Instead of that, the computer is saying, Knight G4. Interesting. So Knight G4. Let's just play through this really quick and see what happens here. So Knight G4, Bishop G5. Queen C8. And then F4. Wow, I never would think to play F4 here. F4 just seems like it's, obviously it's the very next move. Why couldn't we play H6 here? We could, okay. And the move here is not to save your bishop, but instead to play Knight E4, threatening the fork of the king and queen here. Wow, that is a tough line to see. Interesting. So what other moves here? I don't know that knight g4 would be one that I would notice, and my opponent obviously did not see it. So bishop takes. Yeah, this is the one I was thinking his other option would be to take here. And I was going to take back on b5. And then I still felt like this pawn was going to cramp my opponent's position. So let's see, the best move here, knight e4. I did not notice in the game that after I take back the bishop, my knight is no longer here. I didn't think that it was an option for him to put his knight here. It seemed like it would be awkward for him to deal with takes, and then even just sidestepping with my king puts this file in my control. His queen has to move somewhere, obviously. So I didn't think that would be good, but my knight had to move in order to take back the bishop on b5. So it's no longer protecting, no longer attacking e4 when the knight jumps in here. So that does make sense. This seems like at least a move that requires a response from me. Now I'm noticing here that it is dangerously close to being trapped. So let's just say I play, queen e2. I'm threatening here f3 next, I believe, and that piece is trapped, I think. So they're saying a6. My knight goes to a3, so that I don't give an easy take back for my opponent, and doubling my pawns on the c file, and then f6. So what happens here if I play this now? In between move does attack this piece. Wow, again, that would just be really tough to, not impossible. They're way better players than me would find that, but this pawn mass just looks incredibly dangerous as it is if I try to save this piece, which I'm not even sure. It looks like the computer's saying, no, don't save it. Take the pawn back. Force him to take with his bishop, and then take back the knight. Yeah, that's a sequence I would not have seen. I guess there's definitely some ugly pawns here for me. Some double pawns on the e-file. Still have some attacking chances here on the king side. There's no doubt that there's some attack going there, but the computer says this is roughly equal, and that's definitely not a move I was considering. So takes would have been better for my opponent. Take the bishop on b5, or this really interesting move, g4, knight g4. Anything else? Not anything else good. I guess knight g8 would be another option. That is not a move you want to have to make in the game. To send your knight back to where it started. So I'm not surprised that that's not a good move and not one that most people would think of. So I think probably most natural would have been to take here. And then after I take back, this knight jumps into knight e4. And that seems like a logical way to play. So instead of that, my opponent played knight h5. I took with check, forcing him to take back with his queen, and then backed up the bishop and was able to keep that bishop, which I think was important because otherwise I lose this pawn. So let's see. I was surprised by this at first. When I first saw it, I thought it seemed like an odd move. But he was obviously, I think here, let's just say my opponent plays a natural kind of move. I think at this point g4, g4 would trap his piece. He has nowhere to go with that piece. So I think that was obviously the point of moving the bishop back to f8. Just gives a square for his knight to go if that move does happen, which I did play next move. I play g4. He saves his knight. I did not see this move right away. It kind of came in a moment. I didn't even really calculate it. I probably should have. I just figured it had to be good. The fact that he can't take, and the fact that my knight has the option to get into either d6, where if he wants to take, I can take with my bishop and this pawn is still defended and still cramping my opponent's position. Or even better, jump into f6, threatening the fork on the king and queen. I didn't even give that a second thought. It seemed like that was just has to be the best move. And then this is where the mistake was for my opponent. Yeah, this was, as soon as this move was made in the game, I thought it had to be a mistake. This knight was already on the only square that it could get to that was safe. And so by playing here, he has to take back, and then this knight is trapped. But I'm just curious what the best move was here. Instead of playing bishop e7, looks like the game is still roughly equal. I'm pawn up, but with castles queenside. Okay. Oh wait, it's changing here. Sorry, queen e2. Wait, what's happening here? I'm not in the right place. Sorry. Here. So instead of playing bishop e7, yeah, castles queenside was what I saw earlier. And this seems interesting. He's threatening to take with the same kind of discoveries that I mentioned for myself earlier, and backing off his queen, obviously with my knight, with my rook still on the file. Let's just run through a couple moves here. So d6 check, knight d6 check. Takes has to be, yeah, you definitely want to get rid of that knight. Take back. And then this pawn seems annoying, but I also, as I think about it, it's just not going to be one that I can keep for long. I can't see any way that pawn can be kept. I mean, even just slowly preparing, something like this where you play. I mean, this is not the move I would play, but even something like this, that would not be the right move. But because here we actually are threatening to defend it, but. Sorry, going back here, even something like interesting actually. Maybe it's not, maybe it's harder than I thought, because the computer's saying queen e2, just threatening check here on a6 probably. Knight e8. Yeah, that would be a better way to go after it. Obviously, get the knight involved. And I just don't have any other way to get pieces. I mean, I have a check, but nothing after that. I mean, e4, d4, and then this pawn is not going to last. Here they're saying e5, f takes e5, bishop takes e5, rook f8. Yeah, and then we just continue pressure on the queen side, but this pawn is not going to last long term as a problem. It does buy me some time though. I mean, definitely my opponent's kind of focused on that move, especially in combination with queen checks on a6 and this queen not being able to go anywhere, because if he does, then we have discoveries happening with this pawn moving to d7. Checks, and then this bishop opening up along the diagonal. So it ties him down for a few moves and requires him to make, I guess, some moves you wouldn't normally want to make in order to round up that pawn on d6. So yeah, that probably would have been a better continuation for my opponent, but just one of those blunders that happens in a game where you don't realize that you don't have squares to go to. So all right, well, yeah, a few things to take away there. I think on the opening, I didn't miss anything major in terms of the opening. I did misevaluate the position. That's one of the things I want to look at as I go back over the game, is did I have a good idea of when I was winning or not? And I definitely thought b6 was a mistake for my opponent. Just a weakening move there. And with the tactics on c6, I thought I had better, or was in a better position of cramping him when I ended up taking back on with the pawn on e5. So I didn't evaluate that correctly. We were still roughly even there. I had no significant advantage. And really the game was decided by just that one blunder. My opponent playing bishop e7 instead of something like castles queenside, for example. So didn't do great on the analysis, but did get the win. So we're happy about that. And yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time, and we'll do another training video in the near future.